it off, maybe go and get a little egg roll. And I knew it was a good idea because it was one of those ideas I looked over at my wife Katie, and we were just dating at the time, and she didn't think I was crazy. Because normally I would have like an idea, and she'd give me the look like, yeah, that's not too good. So I knew I was onto something with this idea. And what I did was I decided to go, as Dean mentioned, and go get my MBA. And I did something very important. I wrote my second business plan competition. And when I did that, I learned, again, the importance of organization and being able to take an idea from just a concept and kind of drive and do something with it. And I entered the business plan competition. And we were fortunate enough to win win the business plan competition, beat 52 Chicago-based companies. It was really neat. And so I walked into my boss's office. I'll never forget this. I walked in, and he goes, "Hey, how did that thing go last night?" I said, "Oh, the business plan competition?" He goes, yeah, that thing. I said, "Marv, we actually won it." He goes, "Russ," he gave me some of the best advice a boss can ever give. He said, "Russ, that idea is too good. Go start your company." So I said, "Marv, I quit." And I'll tell you something. There's some people in this audience that know how good it feels to tell your boss you quit. So the problem was now I'm jobless, and I had to start fundraising. The good news is I'm starting my own company. Bad news is I actually have to do something with it. And I always tell people and entrepreneurs that, hey, when's a good time to start your business? And the reality is it's kind of like getting a dog. There's really no good time to go do it. You got to prepare as best as you can, and then you actually just go out and get it done. So I started doing something that's really important for everyone in this room, whether you are a graduate of UD or you happen to be a student, and that is you got to start developing your network. You got to really build that network up because you never know when you're going to have that great idea, right? So I started pounding my network, and I didn't have this really, distinct Rolodex at the time. And I was introduced to a gentleman named Ron Kirshner. Now, Ron ran an angel group in Illinois called State Line Angels. So I'm pitching this new idea, commuter advertising. What we do is we sell 10-second audio commercials that are attached to specific stops when you're on your bus or a train. So it's real relevant. You go in, you're passing Brown Street, next stop is Brown Street, come into Jimmy John's, get a super fast, sub, and again, instead of doing it inside your car, you do it inside the bus. So I'm pitching this to him, and he, writes back like 6 or 7 different questions, and I put everything together. I have like this great executive summary. I'm like, we're gonna get funded. This thing is easy. We won the DePaul Business Plan competition, like piece of cake, right? So I'm waiting diligently for this email to come back. I'm like, man, we're gonna get funded. And I'll never forget it. In fact, I actually pulled the email up. I'm gonna read part of it that he wrote back to me. And he wrote, this is literally what he said. He said, "Russell, I do not agree with the approach of selling the airspace to advertisers as a way of advocating government responsibility. I personally find the noise pollution something I do not want to encourage. It's quite pleasant taking trains and buses where there is no advertising. But it gets better. Isn't there enough advertising already? Do commuters have to be hounded all the time? I think the matter of rights of individual," and it just goes on and on and on. And and he ends up by saying, "We will not be presenting this to our members, I'm sorry." And that's literally, I love saving emails like that, right? Because it just like, it fuels the fire. So it was a pretty rough, email, and I just said, I totally, when you face adversity, you got to hit it head on, and you got to be professional when that happens. And so I sent a very respectful email saying, "I totally understand if you can't keep, my executive summary in confidence, I would greatly appreciate it." And he said he would. So we decided to enter the City of Chicago business plan competition. And we go in there, we made the finals. City of Chicago, we make the finals. And we go in, and I'm sitting actually right next to my father-in-law, Al, who's with us tonight. He's one of the best people, best men I've ever met. And he's there supporting us. And he goes, "Hey, so how do you think you're going to do? We're getting ready to actually present." Anyone that's done a business plan competition knows how kind of nerve-wracking that can be. And we're getting ready to go present. And I said, "Well, we're going to win this thing. This is in the bag. We're going to win." And so we're pretty confident. And then in walks the 3 judges. And one of the judges is Ron freaking Kirshner. What are the odds of that happening? So I swear to God, I literally said, "Yeah, we can pretty much go now." And so we went, and sure enough, we did not win. But people always ask me, "So how did you come to Dayton?" And Dayton kind of really, they found us. Dayton, I'm sure some people know, but maybe not everyone knows just what that spirit of innovation is like here. For a long time, the number of patents per capita was greatest here in the city of Dayton. You know, they have the Dayton Innovation Bridge, places like the Entrepreneur Center where our office is with Barbara Haid, who leads that. You know, it's kind of embraced. And so the city of Dayton and the Greater Dayton Regional Transit Authority kind of gave us our first shot. And so when we got here, we had this bad taste in our mouth about business plan competition. So Katie, my beautiful wife Katie, and I said, you know what, we're going to enter one more, and it's going to be the University of Dayton. So when we did that, we were fortunate enough to win it. We feel very blessed to have done that. But we met some great people. We met Dean McFarland. We met Jay Janney. And these people hooked us up with Dan Graham, who actually has been a mentor of mine ever since, personally and professionally. He's just a wonderful person. Well, we also met a guy named Mark Ritchie. And Mark represents a venture capital firm called Draper Triangle out of Pittsburgh. So we go through, and Draper actually ended up investing about $1.5 million into our company. And so I mention all this because if it wasn't for Ron Kirshner, you know, and the adversity that we face, we never would have entered the business plan competition to just try to make it better. So when you see adversity, I'm a big fan of believing that you have to just have an undying belief in what you're doing, and everything always works out. If you're a good person, you have a plan and you can execute on that plan, especially as an entrepreneur. It might seem like the world is against you, but I promise you it isn't. So one last story. I mentioned the venture capital that we had secured. So it's interesting. When you have venture capital, it's a very stressful experience. You know, what basically happens is they look at you and they say, all right, well, you know, we think you're worth this. And I go, well, I think we're worth this. And then you kind of battle it out. And then next thing you know, they give you kind of a list of terms and they'll come to you and agree with you. So what ends up happening is Katie and I think we're smart. We said, we're going to have a conversation on the valuation of the company first. Because we see that there's no sense if they think we're here and we're here, we're going to hate each other by the time we kind of negotiate the terms. And then what? We're going to be partners? It just doesn't work out. So I have this conversation. We're in a hotel in Kansas City, and he says, well, I think your company is worth here. And then I said, well, I think my company is worth here. And I said, well, why don't we split it in the middle? He said, fine with me. I was like, that was easy. Like, this is, again, easy. And so we ended up going through 2 months of negotiations, right? And it was very stressful. And what ends up happening is it culminates in a term sheet. And in this term sheet, again, it tells you all the rules and regulations on how your board of directors are going to get managed and how the partnership is going to look. And at the bottom, it tells you what they think your company's worth. So what do you guys think happened? Of course, the valuation was that low number that he originally said. And we were disappointed. So we countered. We understand it's business, and we countered. And they kind of came up a little bit, but they didn't really come up to the point that we wanted. So we basically were forced to make a decision. Do we want to, take this on terms that we didn't necessarily agree on, or, should we kind of stand our ground? And, Katie and I went, not only being business partners, being married, and that's a totally different speech I can have with you guys, was stressful. I mean, it was totally stressful. So I'll never forget, we're driving to Chicago, and we literally, we called the venture capitalists, and they said, all right, the decision time had come. Are you going to take the deal? And we go in and we pull over, and we said, they have us on speaker, and we said, after much thought and much due diligence, we want to tell you that we greatly appreciate the offer, but we're going to go ahead and move in a different direction. We turned down $1.5 million, which is crazy. It really was. But at the same time, the biggest stress was lifted off our shoulders. I mean, we felt great. The rest of the car, we weren't fighting. Like, we were happy with each other. Everything was great. And then about 30 minutes later, we get a phone call, and this was the day before Christmas, a couple years ago. And they start off by saying, the venture capitalists on the other end, they say, well, in the spirit of Christmas. I said, okay. And sure enough, they ended up coming up and they gave us $50,000 more than the valuation that we originally had agreed upon back in Kansas City. So it all worked itself out. Remember, one of the points of that story is that as you guys are developing and growing these ideas, you guys are, that's worth something. Remember, investors can't invest in your idea unless there's an idea to invest in. They invest behind people and the ideas that you have. So it's worth something. You gotta really fight for that. So now, Commuter Advertising, to date, has significantly grown. As Dean mentioned, we have 10 contracts in 8 cities. We reach 100 million rides per year. We have about 20 employees. We've sold $2 million with advertising contracts since inception, and about 40% of all of our employees are UD students, so it's really neat. So what do you need to do to be a successful entrepreneur? Don't give up and fight through adversity. It's just so important. You never know exactly why that reason that you didn't get that deal in the moment, but you got to believe it's going to work itself out. I'm a big fan of planning and executing on that plan. That's good for entrepreneurship and in life. If you have a plan and you can execute on that plan like we've done, we try to do, I think that you're going to be successful. The importance of setting life goals and observing and interacting with life. You know, it's one thing to just say, I'm going to write a business plan, I'm just going to kind of submit it and see what happens. But have conversations and network and talk to the person that's sitting next to you. And then finally, 2 things. Believe in yourself like no one else can. Have that undying belief in yourself and in that idea, because it will show, it will shine through. And then lastly, have a great idea and chase it, because if you don't, you're always going to ask yourself, what if? So I'd like to just take a moment to thank Bob. Chelly, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure serving on your advisory council. I love the work that we do here. And Dean McFarland, thank you also for the invitation, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you so much.